All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Thursday, January 30th, right here on All In Horns, your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. I'm Tanner Carlson. That is Jake Jimerson. This is our immediate reaction following the Texas Longhorns loss to Ole Miss. Couldn't get the job done. Had an opportunity, a couple opportunities there at the end of the game, but fall short nonetheless. And the Longhorns end up falling to the Ole Miss Rebels 72-69 in the what could be considered a redemption game for Chris Beard and this Texas Longhorn team, or a revenge game, however you want to define it. But I think it was the lack of execution with multiple good looks from Trey Johnson. Arthur Kaluma had a couple of good looks, a free throw opportunity that didn't go through, went 1 of 2 at the line that could have tied the game up, have to intentionally foul. They go ahead and make both free throws, make it a 3-point game. Trey Johnson then gets a corner 3 look. That is a good look, a great look, about as good of a look as you're going to get. Comes short and unable to capitalize on it. Texas drops to 3-5 in conference play. They are below average, below the middle of the pack within the SEC conference standings. And Jake, immediate reaction. I will say this before you take the stand. I'll say this much. I don't know whether or not I'm happy or upset about this loss, because I think if they won this game, I was about to say I was all in on a season for the Texans. I was about to start. I was this close to buying fully back in to a March Madness run, a team that we thought was going to perform the way was going to meet the expectations that we had set for them before the season had started. I thought we were going to possibly get back to that point had we won this game. Now I can kind of center myself and say, you know what? No, I'm grounded. This is where we're at. This is the team that we have. I'm not going to get my hopes up from here on out. That's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I want to say I'm feeling that negative about it. It was a tough, close loss on the road to a good team who is desperate for a win. I think this looks like a tournament team now. So I guess I was just so down on them before this last stretch of a few games, where I was like, this is not even a tournament team. They aren't even going to be in the March Madness tournament. Right now, they are looking like a team that will be in March. I do hope Weaver comes back soon. I think he provides a really big spark to some things they are missing, especially on the defensive end, because that to me was the area they lost this game in. The defense just had long periods of lapses where they were giving up points. I think, right around that 69 points to low 70s, that's enough to win games. Ole Miss is not a great offensive team. Only forcing 4 turnovers is just not enough. Texas got dominated in the turnover category, and they turned it over 11 times. That's not good. You want to, stay under 10. Always kind of feels like, where it's like, wow, they had a really clean game. But 11 isn't bad. And to be in a situation where you're -7 in the turnover battle, where you turn over 11 times, says something about the defensive end of the court. But it's a disappointing loss, and especially since they had a chance at the end. But I'd say I'm still in a more positive spot with this team right now than I was, after the Florida game, and really even after the Oklahoma game. That was a win. Yeah. I was just in a spot where I was like, this team is just not playing good basketball at all. They didn't play bad basketball in this game. They just lost a close game.
They look more cohesive as a unit. Overall, I mean, you look at the stats and you would think Texas won a close game, shot the same field goal percentage as Ole Miss at 39.7 from the field, a little less from the 3-point line, but free throws you were 12 of 14. You can't ask much better from the free throw line for Texas, shooting 85% from the field. Out-rebounded Ole Miss. You out-rebounded Mizzou. You out-rebounded Texas A&M. So attacking the boards much better for Texas. Out-rebounded Ole Miss 42-33, so kind of dominated with 14 offensive rebounds compared to Ole Miss's 8 offensive rebounds. You had more assists as a team than Ole Miss. You had 15 assists, which has been a huge struggle and a huge point of emphasis that you and I have made. But Texas out-assisting Ole Miss. You also created or you had more turnovers, 11 turnovers to the 4 turnovers for Ole Miss. And I think you can kind of probably look at that and say, yeah, that's probably the difference in winning and losing this ball game. But points in the paint, Texas outscored Ole Miss in the paint as well. And so like you said, Jake, this team is not far off. They're playing better basketball than they were even by beating Oklahoma or what have you. The numbers are looking better for Texas as a team unit. And it's something to go on. But that's kind of where I was winning this game. You get to 500 in conference play. You're 4-4 in conference play, and you've won 3 straight games against ranked opponents, and you're playing this style of basketball. All I'm saying is I would have been fully bought in. This is a tournament team, and I'm ready to start making a little bit of a run by stacking wins throughout this stretch of games. Maybe not Alabama, maybe not Kentucky, but stacking wins within conference play and really having a favorable schedule towards the back half of your schedule.
Yeah, I think the schedule lining up the way it does also gives me a little hope. You know, they get a little bit of a break of just constantly playing ranked opponents now.
Yeah.
You know, these next 2 games are games they have to win. You can't drop a game to an LSU.
Nope.
Even though LSU has been competitive, just like South Carolina,
but you're better.
Times,
you're better.
But you are a better team. And in the SEC this year, you have to beat the teams you're better than. Like, just you are clearly better than.
It's a great point.
And so beating LSU is a must. Beating Arkansas, especially at home, is a must. And then you need to find a way to, not go on a 3-game losing skid when you go to 2 Vandy and then you have Alabama and Kentucky at home.
Vandy is a winnable game. However, I think Texas, taking on a Vandy team, you can get 3 wins straight. LSU, South Carolina, and Vanderbilt coming up on your schedule. I think
you can beat Kentucky at home.
Yeah.
Kentucky's not.
I don't see it happening for Alabama. However, Alabama in a dogfight right now against Mississippi State as we're recording this.
Their offense just scares me. The thing about Alabama is you are reliant on them not having a game. They just score 100. And sometimes they have games where they are just going to score 100 points.
Or
and
90,
if that happens,
whatever it is,
Texas isn't going to win.
They ended up beating Mississippi State 88-84. Close game.
Yeah, close game. And Alabama's defense, you can definitely fill it in against them. And the Texas offense is looking much, much, much. I'm going to say much about 10 more times, but it would take up too much airtime. So much better.
15 assists, Jake.
Yeah, no, the ball, and it just looks better. Right. There's ball movement, there's screens, there's off the ball movement. It's not always pretty. It's college basketball. I mean, there's always ugly spurts of offense.
You and I, we only accounted for 2 scoring droughts in the first half that Texas was leading by at least 11 or 12 a couple of different times in that first half of play. But those scoring droughts made it a closer game at halftime. And then really, I don't remember a time in the second half where it was just like, man, Texas just can't get the ball through the hoop. They played fairly consistent throughout the second half. But yes, it
really again, a fairly consistent game. Yeah. They scored 38 in the first, 31 in second. It's one of those losses where it's a loss. It sucks, but I feel better about the basketball on the court that was played from Texas than I did after a win against Oklahoma. First off, it's a higher quality opponent than Oklahoma.
It's a great point to make, Jake, because when you're basketball is one of those games where it is a feel. And if you can make it into the postseason, if you can make a run into your conference tournament, if you can sneak in, even as a 10v10 first round game, round 0 game within the tournament, a play-in game as one of the first 4 or last 4 in, if you can even manage to get to that point and sneak your way into a round of 64 game, Jake, who's to say that you're not playing your best basketball at that point? But you've got to start now. You can't take any more days off. But Texas is from Mizzou to Texas A&M to Ole Miss, 3 best games of basketball that they've played consistently back to back to back all season long.
Yeah. And really, if you look at it, the OU game was unsatisfying, but they did play good against Tennessee as well. So this is now the Florida game in there, road game. They were playing injured.
I'm going to go on record right now, Jake, before we get into March Madness. Florida is one of my juggernaut teams. That's just like
they definitely look the part at times.
They look like a very good, deep run caliber team into March Madness.
You've had a good majority of your games in the last 5 or 6 games where they have clearly been playing better basketball. And sometimes you're just going to lose to really good teams.
You can throw Auburn in there.
Yeah. I mean, second half against Auburn, that was another one where it's a half. Granted, A&M was a half thing, but still you won the game.
Yeah.
But they are clearly improving. They are clearly starting to gel a little bit more, but now to me is where their season will be decided, because now it's okay. You're playing better basketball. You've lost to some good opponents, and that's okay, but it's only okay as long as you go out there and you beat LSU. And that's the next one on the table, right?
And I'll be honest, Vanderbilt is a better basketball team than they have been in recent history. I still think player to player, talent to talent matchup, Texas should match up better than a Vanderbilt team.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a Vanderbilt team who's lost to Mizzou. They are a much better home team than they are road team. They beat Kentucky at home and they beat Tennessee at home.
Right.
They did lose to Mississippi State at home. That was when Mississippi State was really on a hot streak.
Hey, Mississippi State just lost to Alabama at home, but by 4 points. I mean, that's not a terrible Mississippi State team.
No, they're ranked in the top 15 for a reason. And so, the Vanderbilt game, but to me right now, it's sole, even as a fan for me right now, it's sole focus on because these next 2 games are really important.
Huge.
And especially this next game, because this is LSU and South Carolina are the worst teams in the SEC right now, other than maybe Oklahoma. And you have to win those types of games.
Like you said to start this podcast off, Jake, to start this episode off, you said you have to win the games that you're favored in the SEC. It's okay if you drop a game maybe to Alabama or Kentucky, Florida. That's acceptable. That's fine. You can do that if you're not a top caliber team. If you're not an Auburn, if you're not, a Tennessee, you can afford to drop some of those games. You cannot afford to drop teams that you are already currently above in the standings, like an LSU, like a South Carolina. Vanderbilt's a game ahead of Texas. The way their schedules have matched up, I'm not saying that Vanderbilt is necessarily just a head and shoulders better than Texas, and that Texas doesn't stand a chance to beat Vanderbilt. I think Texas almost might be favored going into that game, depending on what they do against LSU and what they do.
They'll be the favorites at home, most likely. But yeah, I mean, if you look at their next 2 opponents, which is to get to 500, LSU 1-6 in conference, Arkansas 1-6 in conference.
Yep.
Texas should be at that 500 point that, if they beat Ole Miss, to me, that just meant, okay, they are locked in as a tournament team. Now, how high can you get? Now you win these next 2 games, you're probably locked in the tournament with how many SEC teams are going to make it. And then you start battling to get quality wins to get a higher seeding. This is assuming you don't have a tragedy to end the season and just lose out. But this next 2 games are arguably the 2 most important games of the Texas season, because not only is it to get to 500 in conference, it would help secure you a bid into the NCAA tournament. And it sets you up really nicely for trying to steal a couple games, or Vanderbilt more winnable, try to steal one of Kentucky or Alabama, and then close out the weaker part of your schedule strong. And they could end up with a pretty good SEC record. So despite falling 2 games behind 500 in SEC play now, I still think everything is out in front of them. And I still feel more positive than I did a few weeks ago. I still have doubts. I still have concerns. I still really want Weaver to get back, but I like the brand of basketball being played now significantly more than I did a few weeks ago. And I'm hoping that shows up consistently, because if it does, I think they're going to take care of a lot of these teams that are lesser than them as they get down to this final stretch of the season.
And let's give credit to Coach Rodney Terry and the coaching staff there on the bench for the Texas Longhorns men's basketball team for making those adjustments, for making this team look better than what they did to start conference play, and even to end at the non-conference play going into conference play. This team did not look like they were ready for the SEC gauntlet, and they showed that. But now, as we're about 8 games into conference play, this team looks as though they are primed to beat at least the lower end of teams within that conference. And Jake, when you look at it, let's take a look at the rest of the schedule. You got LSU ranked below Texas in the conference standings, Arkansas ranked below Texas in the standings, and then you got 3 straight ranked teams, whether that be Vanderbilt being ranked by the time you play them in a week or so or not, that remains to be seen. But at Vanderbilt, home against Bama, home against Kentucky, and then you've got South Carolina ranked below, Arkansas ranked below, Georgia ranked below, Mississippi State ranked above, and then Oklahoma ranked below Texas. So between LSU, Arkansas, Georgia, and Oklahoma, you've got about half of your remaining schedule where you should be favored and you are ranked higher than the teams that you're playing against. That's a great opportunity to finish the season off strong going into the SEC tournament.
Yeah, I mean, Texas has played, 8 SEC games now?
Yeah.
7 of them against ranked opponents.
Yeah.
So now you get the
and
easier part of this.
They have 4 more currently, as it stands right now.
But you've now set, in a way, you saved the season from how SEC play initially started, and now you've at least set yourself up in a way to end very respectfully.
Jake, do you think the bracketology will favor a team out of the SEC that has a lower, not as favorable looking record at the end of the season than a team maybe out of a lesser conference that has a better record?
I mean, the committee's shown that's how they do things. So yes. I mean, right now, I think the prediction was 13 teams from the SEC to make it.
Yeah.
Which would be a record.
Texas is within that 13 teams, are they not?
I believe they were on the bubble a couple weeks ago after that stretch of Missouri and A&M. I believe they've pretty much been in for most people.
Texas is the 12th team in the SEC currently.
Yeah, right now, Texas, just looking at the most recent bracketology, granted, this is from yesterday. Texas looking at a 12 seed in a play-in, ironically, against UCF, and then would play Arizona potentially in a 12-5. On a side of the bracket that I actually wouldn't mind the way that bracket looks. I mean, get Arizona, get more than likely Oregon.
Granted, everybody, hey, precursor, the bracketology is going to look a lot different now than it is going to be in March.
And if Texas ends the season strong, like I think they can, their resume is going to be very strong if they have a winning record or close to a winning record in the SEC. If they end up with a winning record in the SEC and then they also can win a game or 2 in the tournament, I mean, they're going to be looking at a top probably 8 seed. I think more than likely their resume would line up with that, because at that point they probably have more quad 1 wins than they do now.
I'm really looking at Texas as being a 10 seed. That's kind of where a 10 to 8 seed is kind of where I'm looking at them.
Yeah, I mean, again, it just I think that 10 seed is a realistic spot, but you're looking, okay, let's just say they only beat the teams that are below them. So that's LSU win, Arkansas win, South Carolina, Arkansas, Georgia, Oklahoma. That's 6 more wins in conference, which puts you up to 9 wins in conference. I think 7 is what most people were thinking you would need to get to be a for sure in the conference team or in the March Madness team. And so that would put you at
20
losing
wins.
1, 2, 3, 4 more games. So that would put you at what, 9 and 8?
9 and 8.
9-8, I think, in conference. I'm doing math in my head and my brain's
then that's
fried
not
right now.
counting.
But
That's not counting the conference tournament. That's regular season.
so if you just beat the teams you're expected to beat from here, and even if you lose all the other games, I think you're maybe looking at a 9 type seed, especially if you can win a game in the tournament, in the SEC tournament. If you're able to win those games and win another ranked game, which I think is pretty reasonable, between Vanderbilt, Alabama, Kentucky, Mississippi State, winning 1 to 2 of those, that's where you really start to boost that seeding.
I also want people to understand how important the conference tournament is in terms of getting into March Madness. I mean, obviously the winner of the tournament gets an auto bid into the March Madness, but how you finish within conference tournament play, for the teams on the outside looking in, like where Texas position is, it's important. Where Tennessee is, okay, you can lose first round, you're still going to get in the tournament. It's not that important.
And as a top seed.
Correct. But as where Texas is lined up, where Ole Miss is lined up, where some of these teams kind of middle of the road is lined up, making a deep tournament run within your conference is vital. Look at what NC State did last year. Won the ACC tournament, got deep into it, made a deep run into March Madness. I mean, it was crucial that they had a good tournament outing within the conference, and then they ended up bringing that momentum into the postseason as well.
Well, and not only that, but also it can dramatically increase for the position I think Texas will be in come tournament, SEC tournament time. You could be going from being a 10 seed to being a 6 seed.
And that's a huge difference.
By making a deep run, and especially into an SEC tournament where you're going to be picking up multiple quad 1 wins in a very short amount of time. Your seeding can fluctuate dramatically. Because you could get 3 quad 1 wins in a span of a week. And all of a sudden you go from being talked about as a 10 seed to being a 6 seed or a 7 seed. You win the tournament, you're a 5 seed. And you've gone from a 10 to a 5. And so we'll be able to get more into that as we get closer. There's a lot of basketball left to be played. Sure. This is all hypothetical. Texas could lose to LSU and South Carolina and not make the tournament. But we're just pointing it out that there's still a lot of possibilities for where the season can go. They're playing better basketball now, objectively. And if they continue to do that, they still have a chance to set themselves up nicely, not only to make the tournament, but also to maybe be a little more favorable seed than we thought possible a month ago.
Yeah. Jake, for just kind of wrapping up, putting a bow on the Ole Miss Texas game. Again, Ole Miss beating Texas 72-69. Texas had a chance with a 3-pointer from Trey Johnson to tie the game, to put it into overtime. Towards the end, was leading at halftime 38-34, got outscored 38-31 in the second half, lost that game by 3 points. But it was Sean Padula for Ole Miss who led the way in scoring with 19 points. You had Dre Davis with 17, and off the bench, Jermaine Bakerfield with 18 points for Ole Miss. And really your only 2 players in double digits for Texas was Arthur Kaluma and Trey Johnson. Trey Johnson had 22, led all scorers in scoring. And then Kaluma, coming off of an injury, with 12 points. He also had 7 rebounds to boot. But Jake, you need more out of Tremont Mark, period. You need more out of Jordan Pope. And so you just need more out of some of your role guys. And I know your offense flows through Trey Johnson, as it should, but you got to get more production. You can't have Tremont Mark going 2 of 7. You need to try to get him some higher percentage looks, whether that be attacking the paint, getting to the free throw line, drawing some fouls, whatever that looks like. You've got to get some of these other guys more involved offensively, even if that is just drawing some fouls, getting to the free throw line, and getting some easier buckets.
Yeah, and that's kind of been a thing, right? At points in the season, is just finding ways. You got a lot of mouths you can feed on this team, despite it not being the deepest bench. And so finding ways to get those guys more looks. When we saw Jordan Pope start to get more looks, he's had some games where he has gone off.
Right.
And I think Mark is capable of that. I think I'd predicted this to be a big Mark game, and obviously it was not. But I still think we're in store for more from Tremont Mark. He's definitely capable of it. And now it's kind of up to the staff and up to Mark and up to his teammates to find a way to get him more involved, because he's a guy that can really help you come March time, especially because he's got the length, the athletic ability, he's got the shot. He's kind of got everything you want, and he's been a proven scorer at the college level at Arkansas before this. And so I think getting him specifically more involved into this offense could really lead to some good things. And that'll be something I'm looking out for. Also, Pryor in his minutes that he has gotten in has looked really good. Kind of provides a little bit of a spark off the bench. I think he is earning himself more and more minutes. And so that can help extend this bench out a little bit more as well.
Going deeper into the bench as well. I mean, you went 10 deep tonight.
Yeah. Maybe Rodney Terry listens to All in Horns.
Maybe he does.
He has gone deeper into the bench in the last couple of games, and it has helped tremendously.
It has.
Because you're just not playing your key guys nonstop to where they're gassed towards the end.
Correct.
And so even though it's kind of funny, because this has had a more positive feeling of a vibe of a podcast to me than after some of the wins, which goes to show you that we're calling it as we see it. We think the team is playing better, and now it's up for them to just keep doing that. If they keep doing that, they're going to rack up a lot of wins here in this last month or so of the season.
Well, that's going to do it for tonight's episode of All in Horns. This is our immediate reaction following the loss to Ole Miss, and some things to build on, some things to look forward to for this basketball season. It's not written in stone quite yet of how this season is going to end for Texas. I have a feeling it's going to come down to the wire. It's going to come to the last couple of regular season games into SEC tournament play as to what the future holds for this Texas Longhorn team. Are they a championship caliber team? That remains to be seen. I don't think so, but there is plenty of basketball left to be played, and there's a lot of meat on the bone for Trey Johnson, Arthur Kaluma, Tremont Mart, and company to eat off of for the remainder of this season. And the SEC play is not done. Regular season's not done. SEC tournament's not done. And a lot of basketball left to be played for sure. So with all that being said, this is your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns right here on All in Horns. And please don't forget to subscribe. If you've made it this far in the video, please subscribe, like, share, subscribe, do all the things where all past podcasts can be heard, whether that be Spotify or whatever your preferred listening outlet and platform is for podcasts. We can be heard there. Please subscribe. And we are also on YouTube as well. And for Jake Jimerson, I'm Tanner Carlson. We release these episodes 5 days a week, Tuesday through Saturday at noon. And we are your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns right here on All in Horns. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, hook 'em.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.